9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Bam. Now we got it.
Yes, we do.
Hey, Pete, how's it going?
Hey, well, I think you made a wrong turn, buddy.
Oh, crap, I'm on the wrong show. I'll be right back. This is a building stuff? I thought this was building things.
Funny you should say that because, normally, mediocre model, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, no, I'm on the wrong show. I'm improperly attired. So I have to get dressed properly for Interfleet Broadcasting.
There you go.
There you go.
Doesn't have enough paint on it though. It needs some paint on there.
Oh no, this is my broadcaster shirt.
Broadcasting shirt. Gotcha.
Yes, this is welcome to Interfleet Broadcasting.
I'm gonna show my age and say, oh, Walter Cronkite. Yeah.
Ooh. Well,
better than Walter. It was a Howard Cosell. And then
same genre, man.
Yes. Wow, you age yourself out that quickly there. Erica says hi. Mediocre Modeler. Hey, Mediocre. Hey. Lola's there. We got John. John's out there. Paul's there. Hey, Paul. We got lots of people out there. We even have people from down under.
I really think we ought to pool our resources and go to Australia and show up for Baz's debut
Viper's
of his
preview.
Viper. Man, that would be, I think he would be totally shocked. It would be absolutely fun, but we would all be poor.
I've never been to Australia. I've been to a number of places with the Navy, but never got to make it to Australia. So that's got to be a place to go.
Oh, absolutely. I've heard the spiders are kind of big. I'm not a fan.
Yeah,
not a fan.
The funny thing is, I've heard that too. So
won't be doing that.
I don't know if they're
I'd be screaming like a girl.
I don't know if they're bigger than the camel spiders I've seen, but anyways, they're big. So everybody, welcome. This is our normal Thursday broadcast thing. We come back into the stratosphere close to Earth there. We're able to put that signal out there for you guys to pick us up every Thursday, and we are here. So we're glad you are here. So we are a fan-run broadcast. We are fans ourselves, mostly of 70s, 80s, 90s pop culture and sci-fi. Most of us are brought together by that wonderful show called Battlestar Galactica, the original series as well as the new one. Now, so I know some of y'all don't like the new one, but the Battlestar Galactica is Battlestar Galactica, and I'll even say I love Caprica. So I love Caprica.
I still have not watched Caprica.
Oh my gosh, you've got to watch Caprica.
I've got it. My sister-in-law even gave me the DVD set for Christmas, and it's on the shelf of things to watch.
Yep, you got to watch Caprica. You got to watch it. Yeah. John says spider, snakes, and crocs and bugs. I can't say that with Australia. I can't.
That's the song.
Crocs and bugs. I'll try it. I can't. I'm culturally appropriating them. Anyways, I'm here. Gary's here. Looks like David Francor's here.
Oh,
hi, Erica.
Fran? Oh, hi, Fran.
Fran's here. I've got. Am I only seeing one?
Paul Rodder. Kim Harms.
Am I missing something?
Dave Franco. I'm looking at the YouTube.
Oh, you got the YouTubers?
I got the YouTubers. So YouTubers.
Yes, Dr. Macaulay. I keep saying Mr. But
Doctor.
You must correct myself. It's the doctor. The doctor is in. And there's Fran. I mean, I might be like behind you or something. Did Fran just? I can't be that far behind, can I?
There's so many jokes in that. But we won't go there.
Are they making? Oh, okay.
Gary Hickman. Hello, Gary.
I always told Pete. He says every time he does this every week, because he usually does this part every week, and I'm like, I need to get you the romper room mirror. There you go, Mediocre. I need you to make him a romper room mirror So he can go in. I see Fran and I see Chris, and
you know it's going to happen. It's going to happen now.
It's got to happen now.
Speaking of Pete and you guys, I have to say, you guys weekly are. I'm seeing all the awards that you're getting for the Stranded Warrior. I mean, something weekly is popping up.
And that's you too.
Well, yeah, but that's more you guys. Yeah. I mean, okay, it was a group effort.
It was always a group effort. It was a fan effort.
It was a fan effort.
The fans who funded it, the fans who made things for it, the fans who supported us emotionally,
right?
The ones who came and showed up to and came up to the filming in New York, drove hours and hours to get there, and sometimes. So it's all a fan effort. We can't really wait to get that up and running, but I'm sorry to interrupt. Go ahead.
Oh no, I was just saying the poster art was fantastic, which I had the idea of actually turning that poster into a model, a diorama. Ooh. And then it's so fantastic with all the awards. I can't wait to see the full feature film. If
me too. Says one of the editors. Yeah, I can't wait to see it too. Yeah,
I am just so excited. I think it's going to be fantastic. So,
typical word, fantastic. There we go.
Fantastic, right?
So, anyways, this week we want to thank everybody for being here. And if you haven't heard, Mediocre Model was just talking about our movie that we've kind of fan-based movie that we're working on. It's won another award, I think, last week for best trailer, and it's going to be featured in the Triborough Film Festival in January. It'll be one of the trailers shown up front. So that's kind of cool. So the trailers won a lot of awards. I can't wait to see what the movie does. I mean,
absolutely.
So we'll see.
It's going to be so
we'll
much
see what
fun.
happens there. But I love all the stuff. I love putting it together. I love the props. I love the ideas behind it, and also the props and stuff that I see inside of the other show that we're putting together with Pete's group. So
yes,
yep.
Yeah.
So that's there too. So, anyways, thank you all for being here. Don't leave. We're not done yet. But we're gonna want to cheer. We want to cheer.
Toast to sleep.
We want to say cheers to everyone later. Bye. No, don't leave. So we always we have a sponsor-ish type thing. They don't sponsor us really. We just sell their crap, and their coffee, and they throw us a little money towards it. So if you do happen to buy any of the coffees that are on there, that there's a link on our website. We don't have a website.
On the
Facebook site. It's called Merlin Munchies, and tonight I am having pecan pie in the sky. And you know what goes with good with pecan pie?
I can only imagine.
Butterscotch schnapps.
Butterscotch, okay.
Pecan pie, butterscotch. It's got the same kind of thing in it. So,
it's interesting that you chose the butterscotch schnapps. Oh Lord, here we go.
Hang on.
A gentle pour.
We'll cheer in a second. Hang on.
A gentle pour. Oh, gee. Well, see, now I see why Pete goes crazy.
We got to push buttons tonight, damn it. I got to be ready for that.
Well, okay, so the thing is, when I'm on the other side of the camera and I'm watching, Pete would hold up the QR code. Oh Lord, it's going to be a long night, guys. It's going to be a long night.
That's good. Man, that's good.
I decided since I was going to co-host that I also needed to go and get my own. So tonight,
look at you! Look at that. Wait, which kind you get? What kind you get?
Highlander Grog, and
what flavors? I haven't had that one.
Butterscotch.
Oh, look at that!
Vanilla,
I should have gotten that one.
Spiced rum. This is really good. Now, here's the thing. The fine people at Merlin Munchies have been doing coffee for a long time. They have this coffee thing figured out. Don't do what I did. I was so excited to get the coffee. I wanted to smell it. So what did I do? I went and grabbed the scissors and I cut it. And if you look right here, there's like a little pull tab.
Little loop thing there.
A nice little mouse ears. All you got to do is just zoop and it's open. But no. Now, so Mrs. Mediocre Modeler didn't see that I wasted a Ziploc bag. I took the modeler's approach to fixing it, and I used hot glue.
with hot glue. Which makes it taste even better, by the way. A little hot glue in your coffee? Oh, go ahead and do that.
It beats tape adhesive.
Little hot glue. Next time we'll try super glue, but sniff a little bit before you do it.
Hey now.
Mediocre Modeler is really happy today. Oh, boy. He's down there without any ventilation. So, anyways, we always toast out to the fans because it is the fans that run this whole thing. It's fans that create different worlds and different things. People who write, people who act, people, all those people that are involved in creating a fandom for a fan. And that's the important thing that we always like to say is it's because it's the fans is who fuels the fleet. So here's to you because fans fuel the fleet.
Fans fuel the fleet. That is some. The other thing about the Merlin Munchies, I will say, there's a flavor for everyone.
Oh my gosh!
There are pages and pages and pages of coffee. So
if you don't like one kind, stand by. You'll find another. Right. And I can tell you, the what is it? The turbocharged, extra caffeinated one. Oh boy, yeah. That's like pushing the turbo button on a Viper, buddy. I'm telling you.
Oh, okay. See, now that you've sold it. I'm gonna have to get some now.
Let's see. Gary said, Chris, I'd call you a lush or an alky, but I love, whoops, it moved. I love all those liqueurs too. Yes. Doesn't hurt.
The butterscotch in that your butterscotch rum in this?
Yeah.
Oh, we'll have to do that. We'll have to try that.
Nice. So we're just going to sit here and drink all night, everybody. So welcome.
It's not like we have any guests or anything.
We didn't have a plan whatsoever. We just threw this thing together. It's just kind of the way it works.
Do we ever have a plan? Do our plans ever come into
fruition? We kind of do. I mean,
okay, well,
somewhat. Man, what is up with my hair tonight?
I know, right? I have the same issue.
It's like, holy crap, I'm losing more? You go online, you're like, oh, wow, that's one hell of a forehead. Anyways, that'll fix it. There look like that the rest of the night, too. So, anyways, we have a fantastic show lined up for you. We have a number of people here tonight. We have a great, and I can't believe all of the, we're joking around with him. Now it looks really bad. Hang on. We were joking around with him earlier before we started. It was like, I should grew up with every single. Ooh, let's not say that. That's not good to say to your the person that's coming on. But this person has written a lot of my childhood. Yes. That's all I have to say. I mean, from Riptide and from Xena, especially Xena.
Xena
has been Xena's young boy. Never mind. We won't go there. Of course, I didn't. Walker, Texas Ranger.
I gotta do my Pete face.
That's it. Walker, Texas Ranger, and everything else. We'll actually go ahead and play his intro. We'll probably get nailed for it in the whatchamacallit. I don't know. We'll find out.
It's worth it.
It's worth
do
it. Yep. I gotta find it now. And this is the point where I usually say, "Hey, Pete, take over for a second, and I'll find this," because I had it queued up earlier, and now I can't find it.
Well, I got to tell you, it was. So when you guys, when I get the call to help co-host, it's like that scene in Batman where Batman Returns. well, yeah, kind of. Where Bruce Wayne is sitting there and he's brooding, and then the lights come in, and he's like. So that's how I feel, but at the same time, I'm like, well, who's on this week? And so I had to get a crash course in Mr. Sears, and just looking at some of the stuff that he's done is you're right. It's Hardcastle and McCormick and like
oh my gosh,
the A-Team and Xena, and there's just so many, and you just wonder how did that happen? And we're gonna get to find out in a minute.
We're gonna find out now. Either that, or we're gonna be totally blown away with how easy it was or how hard it was. But I guarantee you. I'm sure it's. I just want to know how we have so many people. Oh, hang on, there we go. I'm back now. We just have so many people that want to
how
be.
How much is luck?
Yeah. We have so many people that want to be screenwriters that watch our show that, they write their own screenplays for Battlestar. They write their own, we write our own screenplays for other things. I mean, it's just, what's the secret sauce? What are the people who have been so successful? How do they write it? Are they seat of pantsers? Are they people who just, it just comes to them naturally? Is it something they studied in school? Is it something that, where, can I do something like that? How do I do something like that? And that's what I love talking about, talking to people that write screenplays and people who act and people who voiceovers and everything. How do they get to that point? How do you know, how can I, boy, this is going to sound horrible. How do I gain from your information? How do I gain from your experience? I want
to. The thing about it is, I think most of the writers that you guys have talked to, I think the biggest part of why they work is they're so open.
Yep.
Their message is kind of like yours. They're not gatekeeping. They just like, let me help you learn, or just let me share what I've learned so we can keep whatever this thing is going, whether it be sci-fi, whether it be westerns, whether it be action films, it doesn't matter. They want the knowledge out there. They just want it to continue to share. And I think as creators, I think that's a part of being a good creator is to share your knowledge.
Yes, definitely. And I have now queued it up. We're ready to go. Hopefully the audio comes through. We'll find out here in a second if it does or doesn't. Hopefully it does. I've got buttons to flip back here, and I'll be echoing if I don't stop talking when I flip the button. Okay. So we have the video from the IMDb page of Mr. Sears, and this is a really cool video because a lot of it is like, I remember, oh yeah.
I need to take notes.
Here we go. So stand by, everybody. If you do not know who this person is, when you watch this, you'll be like, holy cow, I know who this person is, and they are amazing. So without further ado, if I hit the right buttons here, we will see. And I probably don't have his microphone on. Hang on, that's probably my fault. Give me a second.
That was
amazing, but now I need to make sure he's on audio-wise. I think he's on now. Check audio. Nope. Oh, he's messing with me.
I'm totally messing with you.
Too many dang buttons in the background here, and I'm not drunk enough for this. Anyways.
It's you now?
Yes. Welcome.
Not bad for an old man that produced stuff when you was a kid, right?
I remember that. I think.
Back then, back when the Flintstones was a reality show.
I was trying to write down some of the titles as they were flashing by, and there were just way too many. There were just so many. And so, okay, just to start kind of at the beginning, So, you leave school. You go to California with your $600, right?
Oh yeah, you got that right. Wow, you've done your
And
research. Oof.
and you get your a job as a waiter at Universal
go.
Studios. Okay.
Yes.
So after that, you go to you wanted to act. That was your main thing. Your initial intention was acting.
Hmm.
But when you went to one of your auditions, you were writing your own material to audition. So what gave you that inspiration? I mean, because I don't know how the Hollywood scene works or whatever, but that seems like a really bold step to like, well, I'm going to go audition for this role, but I'm going to write my own material. So, how did you? What was the relation of what you wrote for the audition?
Well, back then, and we are talking back then. This is back in the 1980s. So yeah, I went out to Los Angeles initially as an actor, or I should say it, an actor. You have to do it that way.
You said
You're
waiter,
not allowed to get
wrong.
the guild. The level.
You say waiter wrong.
Actor. Exactly. Yeah. Excuse me, can I get a waiter? I'm an actor. I'll get those fries for you in a moment. But anyway, so I came out here originally as an actor again. I'm getting stuck on that word. But one of the things that I was fortunate enough to have happen is I was going to an acting studio because you always hone your craft. So as soon as I moved out here, I had a degree in performance, but I was taking classes out here in Los Angeles. And the class I was taking was run by two guys, Roger Vaughn and Wayne Dvorak. And they were really the first school to bring casting directors in to talk to the students. Now it's common. Almost everything does that. So I got to know the casting directors. And I have this kind of I don't know, it's just my attitude. I'm more curious about other people than I am trying to sell myself. And in Hollywood, the moment you try to sell yourself, everybody's like, you're trying to use me. So the walls go up. But I'm truly curious about people. So I got to know a lot of the casting directors. And I would hear them talk about some of the complaints they had in their job. And one of the things was that actors were coming in and they were doing cold auditions with the same material over and over again. Back then it was mostly scenes from like Neil Simon plays. They could mouth the words along with them. And I thought, maybe I'll just write my own scenes. So I just started writing these little 3-page, 3-minute audition scenes just for the fun of it and using them for my cold auditions. After a while, I found out that some of my fellow students in the acting class I was in, they were also attending other acting classes, and some of them were using my material in training, which I thought was kind of cool. So there was a showcase one night where there were going to be 7 scenes performed, and I didn't know who else was doing any of the other scenes. This was one of those things where they rent a studio, they invite all the casting agents and talent agents in, and each person comes in with their own scene. So that night, 5 of those scenes had been written by me, and I didn't even know that.
Whoa.
That's awesome.
So it was very complimentary. And afterwards, I was talking to one of the casting directors who was there, and she said, "Are you the same Sears who wrote those other scenes?" And I said, "Oh, yeah." And she said, "Well, you should consider writing." And I said, "No, are you kidding? I mean, that's for typing, all that. No, I'm not a writer. I'm not a writer." Important thing to remember that I said I'm not a writer. But I thought, you know what? Let me check this out. So I pulled out a script that I had, quite honestly, I had kind of borrowed from the Universal lot because I was working at that restaurant. And very naively, I read through it and I kind of thought, wow, this is like a whole bunch of little 3-page scenes, except with an overall arc and character and everything. So I thought I would give it a shot. And in 2 days, I wrote the worst script that has ever been written in the history of mankind and any other planet that has theater or film out there. But I loved doing it. I just loved it. And so I thought I would do it more after that. And so that's how I basically got started into the writing. But I never intended to be a writer. And that was kind of the key thing. See if I can shorten the rest of this real quickly to get up to how...
Oh, you're good.
Okay, so how I got into the business. Because, you know, everybody, you go to a Starbucks and count the number of laptops that are open, you have the exact number of writers who are in that room. You cannot swing a dead cat without hitting a writer, and odds are the cat has representation. So anyway, at the restaurant I was working, I met this other guy. His name was Bert Pearl, and he and I became best friends. We just hung out. We traveled together. We had a great time together. And we started writing little scripts just for the fun of it. Now, for me as an actor, and Bert also did some acting as well, but for me as an actor, I enjoyed breaking down the scripts because I figured as an actor, if I understood how this all worked, I'd have a better chance of getting a job. It's kind of like the analogy I've used is that if you buy a car, you drive it, it breaks down, you take it to a mechanic, eventually you have to sell the car. If you know how to build a car, you will never, ever have to buy another car. That thing will always run. So I wanted to know how it worked. So Bert had the same idea. And he and I would break down these scripts, and we would write little spec scripts of different shows, not a lot. So one of the shows that had just come on was a show called Riptide. And a lot of people, if anybody who's heard me speak before is tuning into your broadcast, go get a cup of coffee because you know the story. I'm just kidding. Keep the ratings up.
Yes, please.
So, stay glued. And if you get the coffee, get the one they advertised.
There you go.
So anyway, a new show had come out. I just saw the pilot to it, and it was called Riptide. The Riptide was about 3 guys, detectives, who lived on a boat. 2 of them hunky guys, one a geeky guy who worked on computers. And Bert and I decided that we would try to write one of those just for the fun of it. So one of the things I used to do is I would call around to production companies, and I always ask them if they had a writer's guide, just because I'm a curious person. Most of the companies would say either, maybe they do, maybe they don't. Most of them would just say, we don't send them out. That's fine. I didn't care. So I called the Stephen J. Cannell production offices, and they transferred me to this woman. And I said, hi, my name's Steve Sears. I'm just wondering if you have a writer's guide. I'd love to get one. And she goes, well, we don't have a writer's guide. Have you seen the show? And I said, oh, yeah, I love the show. And then she and I started talking about Florida. We didn't talk about the business. She was like, well, where are you from? I said, Florida. Oh, I've got relatives in Florida. And we just started talking. We had a nice conversation. So at the end of that conversation, she said, well, have you actually written any scripts? And I said, my buddy and I, we play around. We've written maybe 4 or 5. And she said, well, the producers are always looking. If you have an agent, send one over. So I said, thanks. And I hung up. Did not get her name. She didn't get my name.
No.
No. Well, that wasn't the point, though. See, I wasn't even thinking. I'm not, as I said, I don't promote myself that much. Mm-hmm. So I mentioned this to an agent that I had met. And he said, oh, I'll send a couple over. So he did. About a little over a month later, we got a call from one of the producers at Riptide, and they said, hey, guys, why don't you come on in? We just want to chat with you. Now, Bert and I had absolutely no idea what was going on. So we went to this meeting, and we met the producers of Riptide. Babs Grayhowski was the exec producer, and Tom Blomquist was the other producer, and we just had a great time. Now, I'm going to try to shorten this up, but basically what happened is in this conversation, we mentioned some, yeah, we are, that's my little thing. We mentioned some of the episodes that we had, they asked us if we'd written any or come up with any ideas. And since we had planned to write a script, we said, oh yeah, we got like 5 ideas. We mentioned them. 2 of them, they said, forget those. The other 3, they said, go think about those and we'll get together. Now, Bert and I still, we didn't know what was going on. Honestly didn't. So when we came back, we had broken 2 of the stories, and one of them we couldn't break, but we came up with a third idea, another idea rather. And they liked that. And they said, write up an outline. And we were like, cool, these people, they're on hiatus, they're wasting time, but we're having a great time because they're awesome people. So we brought in our outline and watched Tom and Babs rip it apart. Oh. And we loved that. We loved watching it because we're watching the process. And these people, and they're smart. And it's kind of like, oh yeah, and it's not like we were left out. We were all working on this. So at the end of that meeting, Tom turned to me and he said, so I need the name of your agent for business affairs. And that was when it hit me. and I went, did we get an assignment? And he said, well, you got the assignment 2 weeks ago. Now, literally when we walked out, Bert turns to me and goes, are we being paid for this? And I went, yeah, I guess. I don't know. I don't know if they pay writers. I knew nothing about it. So he said, how much? And I said, well, I hope it's like $500 so that we can split the money. And back then it was $15,000 for one script.
Oh, wow.
Holy crap.
We were shocked when we got our story payment alone. I mean, I swear I remember calling Bert and we're like looking at these checks just for the story. And I told Bert, I said, I think these people are Satan and they have bought our souls. I'm not sure exactly how to deal with this. Now, what happened after that is that Bert and I had to write the first draft. And so we were hired to write the first draft of the script. We wrote it, and we gave it to their office. Now, I still have the cassette tape of my old message machine for this. So on Monday, I get a call from Tom Blomquist, and Tom says, and he left a message. He said, read your script, loved it. I know that Hardcastle, McCormick, and A-Team always look for writers, so we sent your script over there. Maybe you'll get a job. And we're like, cool. Then on Wednesday morning, I love this part of the story. Wednesday morning, I was sleeping on the floor with my then girlfriend because I was living as a waiter. And you might say, well, what happened to the money you got? I put it right into savings. Daddy did not raise a fool. That money went right into savings.
That's awesome.
So I couldn't afford a bed. We were sleeping on a mattress on the floor. And the phone rings, and I pick up the phone, and I'm just like, hello? And the voice at the other end says, hi, Steve, this is Babs Grayhowski. And I went, oh, hey, Babs, how you doing? And she said, well, look, I read your script, really liked it. We gave the script that you and Bert wrote over to Stephen J. Cannell, who owns the company, and he only had one note in the entire script. So we were just wondering if you guys want to come down, get an office, and work with us full time.
Ooh.
Wow.
Now here's the fun part. This is how I reacted. Oh, okay. And then she goes, she remembers this. She says, you're still asleep, aren't you? And I said, yeah, I just woke up. And she goes, when you realize what I just said, call me back. And she hung up.
That's fantastic.
That's awesome.
And I was immediately awake. And I'm like, I'm staring at the phone. Was that a dream? And so I nudged my girlfriend and I said, was I on the phone? And she was asleep. She didn't remember. So it took me 2 hours to call back because in that 2 hours, I was trying to craft some way that I could find out if that was real without looking like a total idiot if it wasn't. And as soon as I called, they transferred me to Tom's office, and Tom saved me, thank goodness. He just said, so you guys going to come in here and work with us? And that was it. And that started my career. I had no intention of being a writer, none whatsoever, but I loved it so much.
So what was the time frame from that first, was it like a year or?
From the first bad script that I wrote to walking into an office and not knowing what to do with it was about a little, maybe 13 months, but about a year.
Okay.
About 1 year
So
from a standing start.
So how quickly did you quit the waiter's job?
Well, here was a funny thing. I had already left the job as the waiters. I'm one of these people that I have this intense curiosity about everything. So I have a huge wanderlust where things is concerned. So I worked at the restaurant. I was a seating host first, then I became a waiter. And then I decided I wanted to try to find something else because I just want to experience life. It's not, and by the way, not that I'm flighty. I always, as you might have figured out, put money aside to make sure I could write out these areas. So I'd left the restaurant. At the time that this happened, I was putting the ads in the front of shopping carts. Whenever you go to a store, like a grocery store, and you're pushing that cart, you notice there's an ad and a plastic retainer?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. I was changing those out. And I want to tell you something, dudes. If you can get that job, I was making $130 a month. I told you, Daddy didn't raise no
Hang on,
fool.
where do I sign up? I mean,
Right.
But it was a transition job. I had put money away for the transition. So when Tom had told us that we were coming on board, we were still on the phone. He said, look, I know you and Bert, you have other jobs. He goes, so we're still on hiatus. So just give a 2 weeks notice. There's no rush on this. And I said, Tom, I'm making $130 a month putting ads in shopping carts. I'm not worried about burning that bridge. So we were in the next Monday was when we came in.
Oh, that's fantastic. So, okay, from that point, did were you still just in? How long were you in awe? At what point did you, or did you ever get to the point where you were comfortable and not necessarily that you've made it, but just like, okay, all right, now what next? What's next?
Yeah. Well, that's that's a thing called the imposter phenomena. I went through it. I would say to this point, I still go through it. The imposter phenomena is, for those of you who don't know what it is, most of you will actually recognize this. It's when something good happens to you, but you know it can't be because of you. It's got to be a fluke. It's got to be a quirk. You know, any moment they're going to figure out I'm a total fraud. And so that's what happened. I never trained to do this. I never trained to be a writer in the traditional sense. So suddenly Bert and I were doing this, and we were like, oh man, any moment now. Gosh, let's do what we can, but put the money away because this is not going to last. It took me about 2 years working on, at that point, I guess I'd done, 2 years. So I'd done written for 3 different shows, all at Cannell, that I remember sitting there and saying, you know what? I think this is it. I think this is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. My God, there's a, let's see if I can grab this here. I don't know if you can see it or not. This is one of my business cards. Yes, I'm so old, I still have business cards. And in fact, you can tell because my beard is a different color.
They're
I don't
old?
know if you can see it.
Okay.
But that's the card. Now, if you can read that.
Alleged writer?
Alleged writer. Now, I show that to people and they think that's a joke. And I say, no, you don't understand. I allegedly am a writer because they keep paying me for this. That's the only way. If you ask me, are you a writer? Well, they keep paying me. So yeah, I'm just having fun. Eventually I'll figure out what I want to do with my life. But until then.
But don't you feel like that's what has probably been the thing that has gotten you through your career? That other people can see how lighthearted you are and that he's so relaxed and he's relatable. That's what leads you to the next job and to the next job. And even in your writing, it should be transferred into your writing, correct?
Yes. And that's a true thing. All writers should understand that when you write things and people respond to it, hopefully positively, but keep in mind writers often put a shield between themselves and what their work is, because the mistake is to say, oh, they responded to my characters, they responded to my story. No, they're responding to you, because none of those things would exist unless you had a core and something inside of you that manifested it. So once you kind of realize that, it's a double-edged sword, because it means that people are seeing into you, but you're putting it out there. And then also that actually fuels the imposter syndrome even more, because you're saying, well, wait a minute, there's nothing special about me. And that's because I've grown up this way. I've always been like this, but people apparently enjoy it. And I realized the important thing for me was that I realized the more I enjoyed it, the more it was enjoyable for others.
Mm-hmm. I can see that. So in your writing, so you said you in that time frame you had written like 3 different shows. Is that normal that you're writing for different shows at the same time, or if you were on staff for like the A-Team, you're writing just 18 stories? I mean, because you have to mentally.
Yeah, in general, if you're working on a series, you are exclusive to that series. They don't want you writing the competitor. However, I was working at Stephen J. Cannell Productions, and Steve's company was really like a family. It really was. It was a mom and pop type of thing. I could just walk down the hallway, me, brand new writer, I could walk down the hallway and walk into Steve's office. His assistant Grace would just, say hi, and I would walk in and chat with him. So Steve had so many shows going on. I think at one time he had like 4 shows that were in the top 10 back when there were only 3 networks.
Wow.
So
what?
when we would
There's
take
only
a
3
break
networks?
Yeah, go figure that one. Way back then.
You're showing your age again.
Yeah. So, but back then, if for example, with Bert and myself, and we were partners for 2 of those years, So we were writing Riptide, and if we had a break, then why not go write a Hardcastle? And that's actually how we wrote the Hardcastle, because they were just, Larry and Patrick's office would just one flight up and down the hallway. So it was kind of like we were the new kids on the block, and they were checking us out, and they said, hey, you want to write a script for us? Sure. So we wrote one for them. And then we were still on staff with Riptide when we wrote our first A-Team script. So then when A-Team was over, Riptide was over, we then transferred and became staff writers on the A-Team.
Do you remember what story that was that you wrote?
Which, for the A-Team?
Yes,
first
for the
one.
A-Team.
Yeah,
The first one was, because of the way we actually wrote these things, I think it was either Trouble Brewing, or it was I think it might have been the tow truck story. And I have to say that way because I'm trying to remember the titles. We go through so many different titles.
Right.
So, but one of them dealt with a tow truck dealer. I'm sorry, somebody who owned a tow truck company, and there was some bad guy. There were bad guys in the A-Team. Who was smuggling drugs across the border by picking up cars that had been in Mexico and then driving them into the United States. And so the bad guy wanted to control this guy's, tow truck company so he could corner the market, and hijinks ensue, including like a tow truck being turned into a tank of some sort. But there was that one. Then the other one, the Trouble Brewing one, that might have been the first one. That one was about two women who had like a sparkling water company, and bad guys were trying to take over the company. You're seeing a trend in our stories.
Right.
And so the two girls were, needed the A-Team, and A-Team came on board. And in fact, one of the girls, interestingly enough, was Claudia Christian.
Yes, I know.
And
I was
Claudia
just looking at that.
And we became friends much later on. It's
Really?
Funny. Oh, yeah, we were friends, and we're still friends. And then it was one day I happened to be looking at one of the shows, that particular show, and I went, oh my God, Claudia was in that episode. We knew each other back then and didn't know we knew each other.
Oh, that's cool.
So, yeah,
A-Team
it is
had to
interesting
be
how many
fun to
people
run
I've run into who I either watched before I became, a writer, or watched when I was a kid. And we became friends later on, either through work or just through people we knew in common. Yeah, there's Claudia. Yeah, she's awesome.
Yeah, we actually have a friend of ours who's definitely they do, what's the new Mediocre? I'm gonna have to help me out with this. No, I'm not drunk yet. Just kidding. I'm trying to remember I should be. Doggone it. It's the new. Someone's going to help me out here, but they actually have a new.
Not giving enough clues.
I know.
Yes,
Give me a new. One of the new shows that's coming out. Claudia's working on with. We did an interview with her not too long ago at Dragon Con, and we're also doing a. They're doing a new. What's their sci-fi show? Come on. With her in it.
Oh, you're talking about Bab 5.
Babylon 5, yes.
Oh,
So there's
that's right.
Babylon
That's right.
5,
Yeah.
So there's another Babylon 5 style show that Dr. McCauley, which is one of our executive producers on here, is actually helping put together and working with Claudia on that. And she is a fantastic person to interview and talk to.
Oh, yeah. And that's how I actually met her, because I was a friend of Pat Tallman's. And Pat and I met through a very bizarre set of circumstances. But I had so many friends on Bab 5. Claudia, Mira Furlan was a friend, and I miss her tremendously.
Yeah.
And Pat Tallman. So, it was kind of interesting how all these things all kind of intersect. But, yeah, Claudia's great. I love chatting with her.
Somebody asked, will there be a Stingray reboot? I don't think you're going to be able to answer that question, but hey.
Well, certainly not by me. Not that I would avoid it. But, I've heard absolutely nothing about a Stingray reboot. Unless you're talking about the little one with the puppets and that kind of thing.
Oh, right. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Oh, God, I am old.
Well, hey, we know
if you start
what you were
talking about Kukla
so.
and was it
Kukla, Fran, and Ollie, and I just proved it again.
Kukla,
Yep.
Fran, and Ollie.
I escaped that one. I didn't know it.
Talking about these associations, this still, and it is true, like I said, I still have a bit of my imposter phenomena. Honestly, I am sometimes amazed that, I want to say I got away with this, but that I've lived this life. I'm very appreciative of it, and the people that I've met, the fans especially. I love the fans. But every now and then, I'll realize these connections I have. And at the beginning of your show, you were doing a scroll, and you mentioned the runners. You were making Logan's Run references on that. Okay, so you remember the scene when they're doing renewal, and we got a runner. They go out there, run, runner, boom, 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 boom. Okay.
Yep.
The runner was played by Glenn Wilder. Glenn became a stuntman who was one of our stuntmen on the A-Team.
Oh.
And then I hired Glenn when I was producing Sheena to be our stunt coordinator for the first season of that particular show. So it's all that little connectivity.
It's a small world. I mean, and I think you're right. You said that it's the fans that's the greatest part. I mean, I've been a fan of these shows and everything else, and I am in awe of some of the stories that come out. The people who write these things, it's so fantastic. People like yourselves who create the story that lives on in our minds. Hey, what if this would have happened? What if that would have happened? I don't know. I'm you're talking about the imposter syndrome. I mean, it has such an effect on a fandom. I mean, Xena's fandom is huge, and I mean, these are fandoms that people that I want to say that I don't want to make it sound bad, but they live in nowadays. They go back and rewatch these episodes. They know every word that's said. They know everything that you wrote in there. How does that make you feel when somebody comes up and a fan comes up and says, this was so important to me when you wrote this, or what did you mean when you wrote this? Or, I mean, sometimes you're probably like, I don't know, but those people are hanging on the edge of their seats by what you wrote, because those actors, don't get me wrong, I love the actors. The actors, act out the world or the story that you created. It's you, the behind the scenes person, that created that story for them to give to the fans. So how does that feel?
It's it's a good question. There's a resonance that happens, and it is a collaborative effort. So when you're dealing with actors, you want to resonate with them. I've been very fortunate, and my wife keeps telling me, stop saying it's very fortunate. You actually did something, I know.
Yes, sir, you have talent.
See, that's the hard part. It's hard for me to hear that. But when somebody comes up and they say that something touched them, it means that all of us, the director, myself, the actors, the grips, everybody on that production, everybody, doesn't matter what their role was, we produced a symphony that resonated in somebody's soul.
Good word.
And when they thank me for that, it's an extremely humbling thing. And I will, yes, I've had a lot of people who have come up and said that certain things that I have written or shows that I've done have empowered them, allowed them to make choices in their life, or given them some sort of a guidance. And the first thing I say to them, I say thank you for that. And I say, but you have to understand something. The power was always yours. That we opened it up for you or put a mirror up to it, that's fantastic. But don't give that power away. You've always had it. But we resonated with it. And so I think that's the main accomplishment. That goes back to what I said, that when people are viewing your work, they're touching you. So it's an extremely humbling thing. And sometimes it is a comedic thing. I remember being in an accounting office one time, and these two women were working on a computer, and something went wrong, and she said, well, plan A didn't work, time to go to plan B. And the other one, almost like a litany, she said, well, what's plan B? And she goes, make plan A work. And they laughed. And I thought, oh my gosh, what movie was that? And I went, I wrote that. And it's true, it was an episode of something that I wrote. That's a bizarre thing.
Wow. So we actually have a question from one of the fans out there, Michael. He says, this is a great conversation. Any good advice for someone just getting a late start into screenwriting and trying to break through, what kind of thing would you recommend?
Wow, there are so many different paths on this, and anybody who has attempted it knows that it is an incredibly frustrating thing. It's so subjective, timing. There's so many other elements aside from what you bring to the table. But keep in mind, what you bring to the table is what everybody else is working around. It is, once you make that one little step forward, it's about your creative talent that has started the ball rolling. So you don't ever lose faith in yourself, and don't start coming up with excuses as to why this can't work. Perseverance. Anytime you talk to anybody successful in any business, the one thing you're going to hear most common is the word either perseverance or some version of that. You have to keep at it, because that means you have to still believe in yourself. Now, I always tell people, be responsible, pay your bills. When you leave your abode, your apartment, or your house, if you happen to have other people in your life, remember, always turn around, look at them, and remember what's really important, because without that emotional fuel and support, you're not really going to go anywhere anyway. Most of it becomes philosophy after a certain point, but you've got to believe in yourself. You have to have fun. There are easier ways to make money than this. You really have to have a dedication to it. But again, most of it is confronting some of the walls we put up around ourselves. I have a whole talk about this, which we don't have time to do right now, but it has to do with breaking down the walls that have been built around us and the ones we build ourselves. Well, sometimes when I do a lecture, I will talk about, I said, whatever your spiritual beliefs are, I said, I'm going to pick one for a moment just to go with it. But when children are born, when babies are born, they just came from the universe. So if you want to follow that spiritual belief, they already know everything, but it makes no sense to us. That's why they sound like they're babbling. So we have to teach them how to speak. And the moment we do that, we're kind of putting them in a box, because we're giving them, here are the tools to express yourself. And what is the one word that kids hear most often when they are just babies and toddlers? No.
Yep.
No. Now, it's meant to protect them. No, don't touch that. You'll hurt yourself. No, don't do that. But then after a while, it becomes, no, don't wear that. That's embarrassing. No, don't do that in public. No, don't let your child become a child. And every no starts to build a wall. When in fact, all creativity comes from that child. That child just wants to go and play. So we got to kick down the walls that sometimes we built ourselves and society built around us, or situations built around us. And it's not the easiest thing in the world to do.
Wow.
That is a
that's
great
amazing.
message. That is so great.
And a matter of fact, you mentioned that you talk at different universities and things like that. You have one coming up.
What is that line? It's like, yeah, he'll talk at a university. The key is getting him to shut up. Yeah, that's from Shrek. No, I'm a firm believer of giving back. The people who were producing Riptide, for example, Babs and Tom, still closest friends to me today. We have kept in touch. We've worked together many times. We're still really good friends. And they took these two guys who knew nothing about the business. And I remember Tom telling me one time, he said, welcome to grad school, but we're going to teach you to learn. And it was true. They gave me the benefit of all of their knowledge. And it's something that I firmly believe in. And that at least I can give back to people. I may not be able to hire somebody. I may not be able to give them their big break, but I can give them the benefit of my knowledge. When I came out here, I went to Florida State University. At least that's where I got my bachelor's. I actually went to the University of Florida to get my associate arts. So if you know anything about college football, I get to hate myself once a year. This year, however, probably won't be a lot of hatred. However, when I left Florida State, I was given the name of 5 people to contact when I came out here. One of them was Bert Reynolds, obviously. Wow. And then there were 4 other people on there. Now, I did call Bert's office. I didn't talk to him and didn't meet Bert for a long time after I was already a professional writer. But two of the people that were on there, one of them was an actor named Henry Pollock II. And Henry had, if you ever saw the series Webster, he played Uncle Jerry. But he was in almost every Mel Brooks movie. And so I met with him. And when we sat down, we had dinner, we had lunch. And he told me, he's hugely successful, but he said, look, I cannot hire you, but I can give you the benefit of my experience and no question is off the table. And I've remembered that. So that is my philosophy. The same thing goes with Chip Chalmers. Chip and I, to this day, we are, still best of friends. Henry passed away, unfortunately. But Chip was when I met him, he had come out to the school and said, anybody who wants to show up, in Hollywood, give me a call. And he made the mistake of actually giving his number out, so I called him. And, well, the short story of this, real quickly, like I could do that. It's something you learn about me. I've said this about me before. You ask me the time of day, and I will give you the history of the watch. So, anyway, so I come out here, and I call Chip, and I say, hey, I'm out here. And he goes, oh, great, let's have lunch. And I'm like, great, we'll have lunch. He's working in the business. So the day we're supposed to have lunch, I call him, and he says, look, I can't get off out of the studio here, so why don't you meet me on the studio lot. Now, I was like, oh, my God, a studio lot. I've never been on a studio lot. I mean, I hadn't been out here a couple of months. And so I was like, yeah, that's great. So he was working on the Fox Studios lot. So I drove down there. They showed me where to park the car. And I took my time. I walked up those old New York streets where they shot all these old movies. Oh, it was so awesome. So I found his office. And he said, look, we're really slammed, so do you mind if we have lunch on the stage? And I'm like, a stage? Oh, my God. A studio stage. So we went to the stage. And as soon as we walked in, this AD walks up to Chip. And he says, Chip, they need you back at the office. And he turns to me, he goes, dude, I got to bolt. And he turns to one of the actors and he says, look, would you mind having lunch with my friend? I'll be back later on. The guy says, oh, absolutely, sure. So the actor was David Odkin Stiers, and that was the set of MASH.
No.
So I was on the set of MASH having lunch with Loretta Swit, David Odkin Stiers.
Wow.
Harry Morgan was walking around. Alan Alda was over there taking phone calls. They were trying to keep him away from the phone because apparently if a fan could call through to the stage, he'd actually talk to them. He'd stay on the phone.
Oh my gosh.
Cool guy. But there I was, 2 months out here, and I'm on the set of MASH having lunch with them.
You had to feel like you were having a charmed life. That's just...
I was like, delusionally happy with that. But again, that wasn't something that, Chip couldn't hire me. But he gave me the benefit of his knowledge. And when I was sitting on the set, of course, I'm talking to David Odkin Stiers, and I'm asking him questions. And he was great. And he was very funny. But he was great. He was answering my questions. So it was just, I have this incredible interest in other people and what their experiences have been. And I realized that that's benefited me, that I managed to reflect on that. So, but yeah, that was it. 2 months and I'm on the set of MASH. Yeah, dude. What can I say?
Well, okay, so acting wasn't your primary thing. You got into the writing, but you've done some acting too. I mean, right? I mean,
oh yeah.
So
yeah. Well, acting was my primary thing when I came out here.
Right.
Now I will tell you.
I thought you said waiter.
Performance. Waiter. Yeah. Well, here's another thing, by the way. When I had met Steve Cannell, okay. Walking in the hallway at one point, I run into Steve. And Steve says, so how do you like it? Because I'd just been there for a while. And I said, well, it's great. I said, this is awesome. And he said, well, it beats, being a waiter, doesn't it? And I said, well, Steve, the only difference between being a writer or a waiter is an R or an A. And then he looks at me and he says, yeah, and about $150,000 a year.
Oh, yeah, there you go.
And then I said, yeah, but Steve, I'm willing to take the cut in pay because I like to write. And that was the first time I actually heard Steve bust out in a laugh, which, by the way, was great.
That's
Hearing
awesome.
Him laugh was great. So, but no, I came out originally as an actor, and I realized, and in retrospect, really what I've been since I was just a child. I'm a storyteller. I always have been.
Yes.
It was just finding the right venue. All creative people are storytellers of some sort. So I was a storyteller. I found acting. That was one way for me to tell stories through other people's words. I did a lecture one time, which I basically said, I'm a liar. I get paid for it. That's my superpower. And it's true. But I realized that was it. So I still will act every now and then. I'm fortunate that I don't have to go through the grind of auditioning and stuff like that, because I don't push it as my career. I still love acting, but I love writing just a little bit more. It's a lot more fun. So Renee O'Connor, who was the co-star on Xena, she has a company called House of Bards. And she talked me into acting again on one of her plays. So she's done 3 Shakespeare presentations. I've been in every one of them. She also directed Matilda.
Yes.
For the Redondo Beach Encore Theater Group, and I was Ms. Trunchbull. I was the headmistress.
I would love to have seen that.
Oh,
that's awesome. Pictures. It didn't happen.
There are pictures out there somewhere. In fact, to be honest, I'm trying to see if I'm sure I don't have one on here that I could put on my background. If I do, I will show you, and then I will go hide in embarrassment. I don't think that I have one on here, though.
Oh my gosh.
I can't imagine that you did a horrible job. I'm sure you just made it as fun as it could possibly be.
I had a great time with it, and I was wearing 6-inch platform shoes, running around, dancing. Wow. It was pretty funny. Yeah. This is not Trunchbull, but that's actually from one of my my theater days back at Florida State.
Wow.
That's me. That stuff on top, that's hair.
Hair?
I actually had some.
Hey, what's that like? I mean,
it's kind of like wearing a furry muskrat that doesn't move around. I
think I saw Daniel Boone had like one of those. Anyway. Now I'm dating myself again. There we go. Yeah.
There you go. No, I don't have that picture on here, but yeah, there is a wonderful photo out there of me in the midst of my dancing and singing and torturing the kids. So, it was interesting.
So how'd you end up? One of the questions we have from Gloria out there is, how'd you end up on Xena? Was it just we recognized that you kind of went from Riptide to A-Team to how did Xena? Did they just walk in and say, hey, and then what about Xena? What do you think of this program? I mean, that's definitely out.
I just followed the alphabet.
It's such a disparity.
Xena. I just followed the alphabet.
There you go.
18 to Xena. No, that was, interestingly enough, remember I mentioned Babs Grayhowski.
Mm-hmm.
So I got a call from Babs, and she said that she was working as a supervising producer on a new series, which was a spinoff of the Hercules series. And she said, there's a character on Hercules that you might enjoy writing. So why don't you come in and meet everybody? And the character actually was the character of Salmonius. That's what she was thinking, because that's a comedic character. And, my characters, I like to think of them as deep, but I also think that humor is a necessary component of our humanity. Even when we are going through tragedy, humor is something we try to bring out. So anyway, I went in and I met with Rob Tappert and R.J. Stewart, Liz Friedman, all the people who are already working on Xena. They hadn't shot the pilot yet. The pilot script had just been done. I don't even think, they hadn't cast Renee as Gabrielle just at that moment. And so I met everybody, and I was asking questions about the show, and Rob Tappert was our showrunner. And one of the questions I asked, because I'd seen Hercules, is I said, in Hercules you have Hercules and the gods, but are you going to deal with demigods, on Xena? And Rob was like, well, what do you mean? And I made up a story right on the spot about one of the gods of sleep called Morpheus trying to, he wants to marry Gabrielle, but she has to sacrifice part of herself, which is her blood innocence. She has to give that. Anyway, so the episode ended up being called Dreamworker, but I just came up with it on the top of my head, and Rob said, that's a great idea. And I said, yeah, it's a great idea, but answer the question about the demigod. I wasn't even thinking about it in the story. So I ended up writing that script, and off of that script, they wanted to hire me on, but they didn't have a producing slot. So I agreed that I would come on as a creative consultant. During that time, Babs had moved on to another show, so her producing spot was open. And so I just said, look, you got a producing spot open. I'd love to take that one. And they were like, cool. So that's how I ended up working on Xena.
Just that simple.
Yeah, just
no
that
problem.
simple.
Yeah, just
You know,
showed up,
walked
they had a
in,
job.
started writing stuff. I mean, it was on a napkin. I just threw it down.
It goes back to another thing. It's kind of like, if you look at that story, you say, well, yeah, he got that because, he knew somebody. He knew Babs. But I knew her back at the beginning of my career. And this is another little adage that people use as excuses on why they can't move forward. Well, it's who you know. It's who you know. Mm-hmm. Okay, I came out here with only those 5 names that I really didn't make any connection as far as being hired. But when I've heard this thing about it's who you know, I'm like, well, then get to know them. That's the key.
Ooh, good.
Pick up the phone. That first phone call I made about Riptide, at that time, the standard rule was you never call a production company because they're just going to hang up on you.
Wow.
And my attitude was like, well, okay.
Then
So
let him hang
what
up on
happens?
me. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
It's like, first of all, they don't get my name. As I said, with that first person, she didn't know who I was. And it's like I've told other people, I say, if you ever have somebody who says, you got to do it this way or your career is over, I go, congratulations. It means you've got a career. So what are you worried about? And interestingly enough, by the way, who was that woman that I talked to? I'm asking you, you don't know. I get asked that quite a bit. Who was it? Did I ever figure out who that was? It took me a couple of decades.
Really?
And with Babs' help, we finally figured out who it was that I talked to. And it was a woman named Kendall. Kendall ended up being my assistant when I was at Cannell.
Wow.
Whoa.
And she was awesome.
And she never said anything about it.
She didn't remember. She didn't get my name.
Did she remember? Yeah.
No, it was just another phone call.
That's
So
so
we actually
cool.
tried to figure it out, and Babs was like, no, when you called at that time, Kendall would have been the person you talked to. And I'm like, oh my God, and Kendall ended up being my assistant. That was too cool.
Well, so in all your writing, did you have a favorite show or a favorite character that you wrote for, or just the process of writing is what you enjoy?
I am not wired for the favorites list. That is just the
Okay.
thing with me, because it's, ask me 5 minutes later, I'll have a different mood. It's kind of like saying, which one of your kids do you love the most?
Right.
Well, it's the one I don't hate at the moment. It's kind of like that. So yeah, it goes back and forth. I will tell you that I am not ashamed of anything that I've ever worked on or anything I've ever written. I have loved every moment of doing it. I've worked with wonderful people. I've worked with incredibly difficult people. I've worked with people that people would say, I'll never work with them again. And I'm like, well, I'll work with them because I understand them. And more importantly, they understand me. I am not somebody who bluffs. I will not go into details, but I've walked out of multi-million-dollar projects because of ethical issues that just, nobody else would have thought about. But for me, it was kind of like, yeah, that's not the way I want to go, so bye-bye. Yeah, and that's once again knowing who you are, knowing who your core is. But I've loved every bit of it. You can, mention the worst show that you think of my list that, which one do you think is the worst? And I will tell you, yeah, but I loved it. I loved working on that. It was awesome. I'll tell you a great story about it.
So what are your plans going forward? I mean, obviously you do your talks, and you're not opposed to acting in plays like Matilda. I mean, what do you have on the horizon?
I am moving into, I'm still developing projects. So most of, and you guys probably know this, most of what happens as far as Hollywood is concerned is behind the scenes and below the surface. 1/10 of all the activity that happens actually gets seen by people. More people run in this business on development than they actually do on production. So, I can look on IMDb and count how many shows I've worked on, which I admit sometimes I go, huh. But I can't remember how many development deals I've had because I've had so many. So, most of them with studios. Right now I'm developing 3 different projects. not placed with a studio yet, but they're in different stages of their actual development and being put together. One of them is a very complete project based on a series of books by Diana Zimmerman called Candide. We're developing that one, and that's a big project. I'm writing more in the prose world. I started writing short stories for the fun of it. Those were being published. I wrote a short story for the first Alien versus Predator anthology. So I'm now part of that universe, which is kind of interesting. I sent a note to one of my friends was Carl Weathers, who passed away, unfortunately. And Carl, of course, being in the Predator franchise, I remember when I sent him an email and I said, well, guess what? You and I share a universe now. It is the Predator universe, something that nobody thought was going to be coming around the corner. And that was a great experience. I've written for Jeff Sturgeon's Last Cities of Earth. I think 2 or 3 stories in that anthology. I'm writing 3 different novels right now, various stages. And I have a collection. Oh, I guess I should push this. I have a collection of short stories that I'm going to be publishing, either do it on my own just because for the fun of it, I want the experience, or do it through a standard publisher. And it's a collection of short stories of mine. They are very eclectic. There's, fantasy, science fiction, horror. There is a story that Kevin J. Anderson and I wrote together, which is in the Stalag X collection. And there's also, at the back of the book, there will be my first written pilot that I did for a network, for a series that didn't go on the air, called Harry O'Fell and the Day Hell Froze Over. Actually, the series was called the screenplay I wrote was Harry O'Fell and the Day Hell Froze Over. The pilot script was Harry O'Fell, Detective from Hell. It was written back in the early 90s, but I included that in there for anyone who wants to take a look at that. So
that sounds awesome.
Can we expect something like that to come out?
Well, interestingly enough, the book is completed. What I'm dealing with right now is the cover art. It took me a long time because the problem is that, use my friend Kevin J. Anderson. Kevin is a sci-fi writer, an amazing writer. And so when he puts out a collection, it's Kevin J. Anderson. You get that feeling. You know what you're going to get.
Yeah.
So that's not my realm yet. And my stories are so eclectic that there's no uniform, like I can't say it's a short story horror collection. It's a short story sci-fi collection. It's a short story Steve collection, but that's not much of a selling point. So it took me a long time to come up.
It is in my world. I mean, I think you got some amazing stuff out there. So.
Well, thank you. So it took me a long time to just come up with the title. And the title is, I think it's going to be Tales of the Above Ground Underground.
Interesting.
Great title.
That is a great title, yeah.
But then coming out with the artwork, that's the hard thing. So I'm dealing with that. Everything else is finished. As soon as I have the artwork, it's actually ready to go to press. And that
have you started working with artists? Or?
I'm going to reach out to some artists. I'm coming up with my own particular conceptual approaches. As a photographer, that's one of my hobbies. I can put together something, but I would really like to involve somebody's creative mind who's more focused on that particular realm. So I'm not just jumping to throw something on the front cover. So we'll see what comes of it. But it should be like January. It should be published. I'll probably have it done before the Xena convention that's coming up next year.
Right. So development means it's pretty much ready to go. We're just like waiting on a couple pieces.
As far as the book is concerned, yes. Development and other stages. I mean, Hollywood is so well known for using euphemisms. So, you could be in development and it just means you've written one page of a concept that's a possibility for a maybe. In other ones,
wrote something on a napkin.
True.
That's not very hopeful.
Let me tell you, at one time, and this will be terribly discouraging for people breaking in the business, but I will tell you, at one time, you could sell a concept just like that.
Oh, wow.
I sold several concepts for series where in one case, I was paid, I don't know, like $35,000 back in the early 90s, and all I wrote was one paragraph. That sold it.
What?
But off of that, all the contracts were exchanged, and when the studio said, well, we're going to go in a different direction, we're just going to pay you off. I'm like, okay, fine. I'll take the money.
Holy cow.
Another time, I literally sold a concept for a series standing in line at the grocery. I was standing in line in a supermarket, and the guy in front of me, we got into a conversation. Somehow it came out I was a writer. He says, "Oh, you working on anything?" And I said, "I have this idea about," and I just blurted it out. And he handed me his card and he said, "Call me tomorrow morning. We're going to make this work." And I did, and we did.
No way.
That was back then, friends.
I'm about to say, we don't live in that world anymore, do we?
Not unless you really are in the top tier. But back
wow.
then, it was very possible to do that. Unfortunately, no, it's much more of an uphill battle. In one sense, it's a lot easier for a lot of people because we have the internet, and we have connectivity. But the other side of it is that it basically exposed the industry. Instead of hundreds of thousands of people who are knocking in the door, now it's millions and millions. And it still comes down to, how many of you out there, it's like I say, I'm standing on the castle wall and I'm looking for the next person I want to bring into the fold and work on my show. So millions of people are storming the castle wall. So I sit up there and I say, "Okay, which one of you is the best?" And everybody raises their hand. So, and also, by the way, as a side to that, the idea that Hollywood is very nepotistic is only true to a certain extent. When we're working on a show, it is so fast-paced that you want to work with people you can trust, that you can rely on. So in that sense, you do tend to call people you've worked with before.
Like a family, yeah.
Exactly. But don't think that that's going to be the obstacle, because the truth of the matter is the entertainment business, film, television, Hollywood, if you want to call it that, music is the same thing. It thrives on new blood. We want it. We want new blood. We want the up-and-comers. We want the daring people, the people who ask that magic question, what if? And then they bring it to fruition and they can present it to us. We want them. It's because of the numbers, it's hard to find them. And Hollywood is also a money-making industry, so we tend to fall back on the tried and true. That's why you see so many, remakes of things. Exactly. But we really do need, new people. So those people out there that are trying to break down the wall, please keep doing that for my sake, because I want to see the stuff.
Yeah, could be something new. I know we're getting close to the wire here. So one of the final questions we'd love to ask is, if you could write, I'm sure this probably been asked before, any place that you would love to have written for, but we're not given the opportunity, or maybe what would you write for now? I mean, is it Star Wars, Star Trek? Is it something? What would you love to get a hold of and actually get into that universe? I mean, we wrote Xena. You've written so many other things. What universe would you love to break into? What would you love to do?
First of all, understand that I'm not disappointed in anywhere I've ended up with, or not.
I would not be, yeah.
Obviously.
Absolutely.
I was, by the way, a big Battlestar Galactica fan back then. And then, of course, I had the opportunity to work with Glenn Larson on Highwayman, worked with him there. And I also worked with, obviously, Dirk Benedict and also Richard Hatch. Yep. So it was kind of like I'm standing here talking to Richard Hatch. Oh, my gosh. And it was on an episode of Riptide that he was a guest star on. I went down to the set just so we could chat. And then so we kind of knew each other. We'd run into each other either conventions or at events. And obviously, Dirk I worked with on A-Team. However, here's the thing. My big fandom when I was a kid, there were many of them. One of them was, as a side story, one of them was the old series called The Time Tunnel. Okay. And the Time Tunnel was, it was a sci-fi, two characters go back in time. And Jimmy Darren played Tony. So I'll tell their story real quickly. Jimmy Darren played Tony in that, and anytime I was with my kids, my friends, 10 years old, whenever we played Time Tunnel, I was always Tony, because Tony was my character. I always played Tony. So anyway, pages off the calendar. I'm writing the first A-Team episode with a solo credit. Bert and I have separated our contracts. He's writing as an individual. I'm now writing as an individual. So I'm writing an episode called Family Reunion. And the director is Jimmy Darren. And it was one of the first things he'd ever directed. And so I was at my my fiance at the time, my first wife. I was at her place and I was talking to him. There it is. Jimmy's right in the front there. And I was talking to Jimmy on the phone because we had to start shooting the next day, just about some script changes. And so we chatted, and hung up the phone. And my fiance, she says, "Who was that?" And I said, that was, and then I froze and I went, "That was Tony from Time Tunnel." And that little kid inside of me jumped up and went, "Dude!" Used to play him. But I will say the series that had the most effect on me was Star Trek. Classic Star Trek.
There you go.
Now, the weird thing about that is that I, of course, was always Captain Kirk. I was the one who, if we were anywhere and there was danger, my shirt ripped open and I did a double kick. I could walk into any store, if they had, back when they had videotapes of Star Trek, if they were playing one, I only needed one line of dialogue to tell you everything about that episode. I was so hardcore about Star Trek. So I come out here, and of course the reboot is going on, or not the reboot, Generations comes out.
Yeah.
And I have, it's the one franchise I've never worked on, and it's the one that I was like, I would be sure that would be the one I would work on. Now, I went in to talk to Michael Piller when he was running Next Gen so many times, and we became good friends. And I mean, literally, I'd go and I'd pitch 5 ideas. They wouldn't work out. 5 more ideas, either they were doing them or it wasn't something I wanted to pursue. And at one time, Michael just said, "Steve, we got to get you in here to write one." And I said, "Michael, put a contract on the table. I'll sign it. Tell me what to write." So I kept thinking, that franchise. And so I was meeting over at Voyager. I almost ended up being one of the showrunners on Enterprise. And that's another story dealing with how that all took place. So I was that close. Literally, the staff thought I had already been hired. They were saying, "Have you seen your new office?" I'm like, "Well, we haven't sealed the deal yet. Paramount is still making up their mind." And it didn't work out fortunately, for reasons that didn't have to do with me. And by the way, Manny Cotto, when he came in, I thought he did a good job, and the franchise just didn't go. However, there was one point where a friend of mine was going to be in the first reboot Star Trek movie, the one with Chris. And so he was going to be an extra. He knew the person who was hiring the extras. And he said to me, he says, "You want to be an extra?" And I was like, "You know what? Damn it. I'm going to get on this set.
Hell yeah.
I'm going to be an extra." And he said, "You might have to shave your beard." And I said, "I'm shaving my beard. I want to be on this." Unfortunately, there was a writer's strike, and the set was
Oh my
being picketed.
gosh.
And I was not going to cross the line. So I was kind of like, oh, well, there it goes. And interestingly enough, the guys who kind of pioneered the Star Trek reboot, Alex Kurtzman and Bob Orkey, Alex at one time was one of our assistants at Xena.
Oh,
No way.
Yeah. In fact,
Small
when I left
world.
Xena to go produce, work with Sony to produce Sheena, Alex and Bob took my job. They basically came in as the co-exec producers on Xena, so I opened up a spot for them to get on there. Little tiny world.
It is.
But yeah, I guess Star Trek would be the one that I would say that I should have, and I don't know.
That's
Maybe
awesome.
one of these days.
One of these days. I mean,
right.
it doesn't mean that it's not possible. I mean, there's
Right.
so many Star Treks now. Come on,
is
there's
always
got to be
possible.
something out there for you. I'm sure.
I know it's always
There's,
possible. I mean,
Strange New Worlds and the new the Star Trek Academy, Starfleet Academy. There's all sorts of things going on now. So
Yeah, just write something and slip it to Kate Mulgrew.
and I know so many people from the Star Trek universe, actors and writers and things like that. And it is kind of one of those things. It's like, I grew up being Star Trek and not there. So
Yeah, that's a shame, but
I did okay.
yes,
so
you did.
you've got Stalag X. And that is your you've written that.
Stalag X. And this is the variant cover. That's the variant cover. This was for Emerald City Comic Con when this first came out by The Vault. They did a great job, by the way, as far as
EMCC.
I love. If you take off the sleeve, I actually loved it.
Ooh,
Wow,
that's
nice.
nice.
Cool.
The art on the outside. I really like that. But yeah, so Stalag X, Kevin J. Anderson and I created this one.
And that's available on.
It's an interesting thing. I think you can still get it.
I know the
Vault Publishing was the
audiobook is
publisher
still out
company.
there.
The audiobook is still out there. The Vault kind of stopped pushing it. We're not really sure why. Kevin and I kind of wondered about that. And that one is in film development right now.
No way.
Wow.
Really?
Congratulations.
Oh yeah. That was one we had when we went through 3 different publishers in doing this. originally, Kevin and I had met on a convention, some convention where literally when all the guests, there were like 8 or 9 of us that were on stage to meet all the fans who had showed up for the convention. If you took out all the relatives, we outnumbered the audience. But we all got to make friends. And so Kevin and I just hit it off. And so we decided that, he had this author career of some sort
Oh, geez.
that he was
No,
doing
really?
something with. And I was doing television. So we thought about doing a TV series together. So we came up with this idea, Stalag X. And then a publisher that he had worked with brought up the idea of wanting Kevin to do a graphic novel. And he said, well, I'm working with Steve Sears. And apparently one of the people who owned that particular company was a fan of Xena, and the other one was a fan of Kevin. So they were like, yeah, let's make this deal. So that's when we started working on it. We met Mike Ratera, who did our interior art on our second publisher. And then by the time we got to the vault, we had most of it already done, completed. Now, before it was published, I, of course, started getting the information out there, trying to find a deal.
Right,
Studio connections of people I know. So I would send them some copies of this and say, this is what we're working on. And so it'd be a great series and da-da-da-da-da-da. So we get a phone call. Actually got an email from the publisher saying that somebody was reaching out about the film rights. And we were like, cool. So we'd already had like one option deal with a small company. And it was, we owned the rights. That one had gone away. And so we took the phone call, and it was, if you recognize his name, and you should, it was Francis Lawrence. Now, Francis Lawrence is a director. He's directed all but one of the Hunger Games.
Yep.
He directed I Am Legend, Constantine, Red Sparrow, one of my favorite movies.
Oh, yes.
And I loved his work, and it was him calling. So he wanted to, he said that they loved it. And he and his partner, Cameron, they wanted to do a shopping arrangement with it. I think he had a deal with Fox Studios at the time. And so we agreed. And I was like, we love talking to him. He's just a cool guy. So we signed that deal with him, and then COVID hit, and everything got delayed. Yeah. So, but we kept renewing the deal. We were like, if you guys want to keep this until we get through this, they did. So coming out of it, his new deal was with, I want to say United Pictures Entertainment. It's because I keep getting confused. United Pictures, something. They did Rocket Man. They did 1917.
Okay.
So they were the big new company. And so apparently he went in and he said, here's a part of my package. I want to do Stalag X. And so they agreed to that. So we signed an option development deal with that studio, which is still ongoing as far as development is concerned. Now, after all this was done, I'm obviously feeling really good about myself because, hey, I got it out there. Success. So I was talking to Cameron, and I asked him, I said, so how did you guys get a hold of this? Was it through this guy over at Paramount, or did you get it through this guy and you over at Disney? How did you get the project? And he said, I think it was Barnes & Noble.
Oh, my gosh.
And it's true. They found it in Barnes & Noble.
No way.
Now, I will tell you, that is the best way for that to happen, because it means that nobody came to them and said, you need to look at this. They literally said, we love this.
Yes.
And want to go with it.
That's fantastic. I mean,
that is actually,
that says something. Is like, it wasn't like somebody knows or somebody knows or somebody knows. It was somebody picked it up and was like, this is really good. They were looking at names on it. They weren't looking at anything else. They looked at it and said, this would be a great TV show or movie or whatever. That's fantastic. That says a lot about your writing.
It was thrilling. and yeah, so we're absolutely thrilled with that. We want to see how far that goes. Now, again, like Hollywood, will it ever see the light of day?
You never know, right?
You never know.
There's a little part of me that was hoping you would say they saw it on the front of a shopping cart.
See, now that would have been perfect. That would have been perfect.
There's not enough shopping cart advertisements nowadays,
Yeah, see?
I mean, really, we should, invest in those shopping cart advertisements now. I just don't see enough of them.
I was curious about that. Like, does anybody really look at those things? They did market research on it. The company that ran that did market research. if you go into a grocery store, and let's say you're looking for paper towels, they found out that 90% of the time you'll go out with whatever was advertised. As long as not a specific brand, like 80 or 90%, it's likely that you'll go out with the brand that's on there. It's subliminal advertising. See all this stuff I know, and I don't know how I know it.
Yes.
Why do I know these things?
Well, your abilities are amazing, sir. And
Yeah, absolutely.
we definitely want to have you come back and talk, especially if we get to the point where that Stalag X really gets
Move forward.
more movement, and we get to see that on the TV show. We love to talk to the writers, and once again, it's something that just like your regular TV shows, the Riptides, the storyline that came out of your head onto a page, into our houses, into our brains, into our fandoms. You are extremely talented. Thank you so much for what you do. It's great to be able to talk to somebody like yourself. I would have, when I was a kid, I would never thought I'd gotten this far. Even
Absolutely.
It's like, how did I? The TV shows I used to love came from you. I mean, granted, it was a group effort, but you created that story that I watched that night. You created the stories that I came back to every week to see. I would never. You can't sell yourself short, sir. You are amazing. You are very talented, and we hope to have you back again. And we'd love to talk more. I hear a lot of different stories there that we didn't get into tonight, and the Xena stories and everything else.
Yeah,
I think it would be so much fun to have you back, and I wish we had more time tonight. But thank you, thank you so much.
Thank you,
and,
absolutely. Thank you.
This is
Thank you.
This is to you, because fans fuel the fleet, sir, and you
Right back
fuel
at
the
you.
fan. You fuel the fans. Wow. Have a good night, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank
Take
you.
care. As we try to
Wow.
find the button.
What, man?
Gotta hit the buttons. Hang on. I got the button here somewhere. Which button is it? I'm not sure.
What a great interview, man. Oh, wow. 5 minutes in his head. I was also thinking.
It's talent. I mean, damn it. Can I suck some of that out somehow?
The funny thing is, you're saying how the things you wrote are the things that I used to come back to.
Oh, yeah.
So what you're saying
Every
is
week.
you made us.
Yeah.
You're the reason we're like this.
Yep. Whether you blame you or not, I don't know sure at this point. But but yeah, it's a great stories, great, fantastic. I mean, God, it's some of the storyline. I remember Riptide. I remember going every week, going to watch it. I love, the humor in it. It was so much fun. It was an escape, even though I was going to high school. I mean, I was young, but it was something that we have I guess the word, there's an entertainment factor. And then, of course, there's always, people write things for entertainment and things like that, but they really do fuel the rest of your life. They do fuel things
absolutely.
that they may mold your sense of humor. They may mold your ideas of life. They may mold something that's out there. Maybe you're not going to be a fantastic writer, that like he is, but maybe it's going to, inspire you to be something else. Even if it just lets you go back and laugh about something, or lets you go back and now, of course, now that I remember Riptide, and I'm thinking to myself, the helicopter. Everybody remembers the helicopter and
the funky robot or whatever.
And it's like at this point we're like, I need to go back and rewatch that, because it's entertainment. It makes me feel good. It makes me feel something inside. It may not inspire me, to do something else in regards to writers or whatever else, but it makes me feel good. It makes
Yeah.
me wish I was there. It makes me think maybe if I am a writer or a creator, I might look at that and go, you know what? That inspired me so many years ago, and now I want to do something like that. I want to write a book. I want to write a show. I want to write something. It's people like Stephen that that help us move on other things and leave something behind. And I always say that every time I get on this little step stool up here, get up on the soapbox. You leave, it's important that you leave something behind, and something that you create something. You have done something. Mediocre Modeler. You create. You inspire other people to make models. You go out and do something. Yeah, you go out and do something. Some people watch your show and say, "Hey, you know what? I can't do that," and you show them exactly how to do something. It's so exciting to have somebody on like that, and it's inspiring.
Yes, it is.
It's inspiring
It's
to have
very.
somebody like that too.
I bet you he's got great talks.
I can't wait. Hopefully he'll agree to come back again, and hopefully we'll, when Stalag takes off, we'll have him back on and everything else. Speaking of persons that we've had on the past, we have Bert-Oliver in the background. I think I gotta find him.
Bert, are you out there?
He's out there. I just gotta find him. Hang on.
Not 3 times. You're still out there.
Wave, will you? Just kidding. So we have Bert-Oliver, and he has done something. And I know the audio is probably not on right. Hang on. Hang on, Bert. Give me a second. Yep, there you are. Now try it.
Bert.
Audio.
All right, how's the audio now?
There we go. There we go. So Bert is a award-winning author as well, and he's joined our team. So we have tonight the very first episode of Bert's Battle Briefing, which I think is fantastic because it is a look at in this case it's a Battlestar look. I'll let you say it. It's more of a Battlestar look at how it connects to history. So I put down underneath historical correspondent, which I don't know if it's quite right, but we'll figure it out later on. But being the first episode, we kind of wanted to get an idea of how most of these movies and things like that actually connect up to history. And Bert, you have got a great little. I've actually previewed some of this. A great briefing of this and how it connects up. So I wanted to, thank you for coming on. Thank you for putting this together. Thank you for joining the team. And
thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah,
I was sitting in the background
evidently
for a while and had a chance to watch the interview that just unfolded. Very inspiring indeed. Really cool.
What a fantastic person. And I apologize, Mediocre, that your name is not correct. I thought I fixed all of these, but I did not.
I could be Pete. I could be Pete.
But tell us a little bit about the briefing. What do you plan on giving to us here?
Yeah, I like alliterations. So Bert's Battle Briefing kind of was an immediate winner when I pulled it out of this hairless head. And it sounds like a quite martial title, but we are Battlestar Galactica fans, right? After all. So in lots of writing, armed conflict just sets the stage for great fictional drama, right? The stakes are always high. The heroes that you follow and root for, their life is in danger. So very high stakes, high tension at any given time. And of course, Battlestar Galactica really cranks this up to 11 by having the future of the entire human species at stake pretty much every given episode. So even if we are very peaceful people or try to avoid conflict in our daily life, we like to watch it or read it or listen to it. It just makes for great drama. And I think since we have the logo now, we might want to try to put this on a shopping cart somewhere. I think it will look right there. Just an idea.
All right, we got to contact that company right now. So,
yeah, we should look into that and the power of this messaging. So Tipsy, you're absolutely right. We want to look at, well, we're Battlestar Galactica fan channel. So what's going to be in the briefing? There's going to be a lot of Galactica in it. We're going to pick lines or scenes, story arcs, or entire episodes, and look at how's the writing, how is what's being presented grounded in human history, in human mythology. So what came before it, but we also look into how it influenced the genre of science fiction moving forward, or pop culture of the 70s and 80s as a whole. So we'll pick things one by one. For the first installment, I thought we'll just pick something that's kind of most people's favorite. So the dual episode, The Living Legend, for most fans, this is it's the number one and two episodes. It's the highest rated part of Classic Galactica. If you look at IMDb, these are the two episodes that have the highest rating, and they introduce the viewer. At this point, you're already familiar with the high stakes. You're already familiar with the background story. You've seen the last remaining Battlestar Galactica fighting against the Cylon Empire, but this episode introduces new things: the Pegasus, another surviving Battlestar, and its legendary Commander Kane. But ultimately, as much as there's going on in this double episode, it's kind of funny that it's about fuel. It starts with, oh, we don't have fuel anymore. We've been running from the Cylons for so long, we run out of fuel. And then they run into this other Battlestar and this very enigmatic commander. And the first thing is that, well, we should take it from the Cylons. We should go on the offensive, not being on the defense anymore. And we'll take what we need. We take that fuel. And I think the choice of having this pretty big episode based on fuel shortage, I thought it was cool because it gives a relatable element. Lots of science fiction, when you say, you have a show that's set amongst the stars with human colonies that don't have connections to Earth, and they are being chased by highly polished, mean toasters, and you want realism? People say, yeah, I don't know. No, I don't want realism in my sci-fi shows, but I want something that makes sense or is relatable. And Battlestar Galactica is not a deep space exploration ship. It's not an Enterprise. It's not really designed to go on an endless patrol. So them and the ships their wisdom that carries the remainder of the human species, they're not designed for long distance travel in their universe. So them running out of fuel makes sense. So you have something to fight over that's really relatable, and to some degree it is realistic. If you think about spaceships that we actually built so far, they're basically gigantic fuel tanks with a little bit of payload strapped on top. So we know spaceflight needs a lot of fuel, and it's not something while you watch it that you take note of or actively track, but it gives it an immediate grounded realism, something to relate to. The premise of the show makes sense. Then you add other elements, right? So there is the base stars, the Cylon base stars they fight against. These are, along with the battle stars, these are aircraft carriers, or in this case, spacecraft carriers, right? So we do have aircraft carriers, and we are somewhat familiar with the operation and what they're about. And yes, the Galactica and the Pegasus, they're formidable warships in their own right. But if they don't have their fighters ready, they're severely weakened, and all these fighters need fuel. So it comes back to this almost feels like a carrier battle that could have happened in our history in World War II, where the Imperial Japanese Navy clashes with the U.S. Navy somewhere in the Pacific. And now, of course, when the show came out, it was 78. In the 70s, saw a lot of big war movies coming out. The decade started off in 70 with Patton, where basically about a general, about a leader. And I think that the figure of Commander Kane is very similar to General Patton. They are seen as military geniuses. They have really high-level tactical strategic leadership, but they're also somewhat of a prima donna. They're somewhat controversial. Nobody is ever quite sure, are they giving these orders to really aggressively make a push behind enemy lines, or are they glory seekers, or are they all of the above? So I think that Commander Kane is heavily modeled after Patton in what people thought about him and how he was portrayed in this movie. Then, of course, the carrier action I was already talking about. There was Tora, Tora, Tora from the same year, the attack on Pearl Harbor. And then a couple of years later, but before Galactica came out, Galactica of 76, and Midway, the movie was, 78, and Midway was in 76. So that was a big, monumental, epic war movie about what followed Pearl Harbor, the Battle of Midway, where then the carrier fleet that attacked Pearl Harbor got basically into a trap, this time set by the U.S. Navy. And it was a balanced battle. It could have gone one or the other way, and we watched it. We saw the depiction of this action from both sides, where it was swinging from one commander's perspective to another. In this, just collectively, I believe, formed our way how we look at these type of battles. We have these images, and some of the movies like Midway, they use real footage from World War II. So when we saw a sweep of attack bombers coming in, we just saw the formation and the angles and the way how it was shot. This all became part of our collective memory. And we don't necessarily realize this, I think, when we're reading something or watching something, but there is a familiarity to it. I've seen this before, completely different context, and it just adds to, this makes sense to me. This is something that is not just completely alien, completely esoteric. Science fiction, as edgy as it can be and should be, always needs this component that gives your mind something to attach to. And I believe collectively Galactica did a great job. And I think the probably the best episodes to highlight this are the Living Legend duel episodes. Another example is the fog of war, right? Meaning limited intelligence. So the commanders, as I talked about, Adama and Kane, and of course the series antagonist Baltar shown here, they do their best to predict what the enemy is thinking, and we're used to this back and forth, this ebb and flow of battle from the movies I mentioned. We see what the admirals of the Imperial Japanese navies are planning, what their attack plan looks like. Then we watch U.S. naval intelligence to try to predict their moves and foil that, and we see this in this double episode as well. So nobody knows 100% of what's going on. Kane is very strong in terms of having the initiative. He just does stuff and wants others to react. And he forces Balta, who looks quite nervous here in this picture, and for good reason. He keeps him on the defensive. He needs to react to what's going to happen next. And so Kane keeps this initiative, and that makes his military leadership very strong, and the larger-than-life legendary figure that he is portraying very believable in the episode. And of course, Kane is a confident commander. Baltar is a little bit of an overconfident commander. So Baltar is shown as, at any given step, he believes that his next move is the best possible, and it will result in the destruction of the enemy fleet. There's just no other possibility. And then, of course, it doesn't happen this way. His plan gets foiled, and eventually he has to, he retreats from battle. So all these elements ultimately make the show overall work. And this dual episode I picked for today, in particular, the storytelling always needs something that you can relate to. In science fiction, many times it's written from the human perspective, because that's a first step, because we are human. So the way of our thinking is, of course, familiar to us. There are very few shows that are completely shown from an alien perspective, and for good reasons. And all these elements that we just discussed that had become part of our pop culture, of things that we've seen. Now, I know the Tipsy Toaster has actually served in the Navy, but even if you don't have the immediate experience of serving on a ship or being part of a task force or having been in armed conflict yourself, you can still relate to these themes and topics, and they make the show work. So I know it's been a couple of years since it aired, but I think it's still worthwhile saying well done.
Yeah, absolutely.
Good. I love this episode. This was fantastic. I know we had talked in the past about what I think it's important to connect some history to some of the things that's appeared in Battlestar Galactica or the other shows. And Bert, thank you so much for coming on and doing this. This is fun.
Oh, no problem. My pleasure.
Yeah. This is, I
love talking about this stuff.
Yeah,
and, as Stephen said in the interview, it's easy to get me started, a little bit harder to make me shut up. But I ended the script here, so we're good.
Yeah, I think you had written in some of your books, your award-winning books, and that you a lot of your battles that you put inside of your books were based in history as well.
Yeah, that's right. I'm a bit of a nerd for military history there, especially 20th century. I went back one war, so my ship battles, especially for the debut novel, were based on Age of Dreadnought all the way up to World War II ship battles. Mm-hmm. So there is actually fighting in formation and ships dropping out of formation when they take too much damage. And so I tried to keep things relatable this way. Of course, a ship battle is two-dimensional, and it's not an uncommon critique of science fiction where people say, well, but you got space, right? You got 3D. Why do fleets meet head on, or why they're kind of always next to each other? Is that realistic? And I think that fleets meet where there's something to fight about. And something to fight about in space would be space habitats or planets or colonies. And these are all located in solar systems. Doesn't have to be ours, but they're usually in the plane of the planets. So that makes the battlefield a little bit like a two-dimensional battlefield, like one surface. So I ran with that theme, and I could use classic large-scale battleship-to-battleship engagements as sort of a mental template. And it helped me to write it. And I also believe that it helps the reader to understand what is going on, have a mental picture without overwriting the environment and spending 3 pages describing the ships and the formation. So I'm drawing on this collective awareness of what this kind of stuff actually looks like.
And I'll just finish this off by saying Commander Kane died. Anyways. He's dead.
I thought this is so hot and controversial, so I left this part out for good reason.
I was gonna say, Bert, you do know the 78 Galactica it's about family, and so your first episode, you bring up the most divisive character in that.
Of course, it's make it or break it. People are gonna love it or hate it, and right. I think this is the episode to try it with.
Yeah, you look at Kane and you're like, in my opinion, I think Kane was dangerous. I mean, he's reckless. He's the one who, like you said that in your brief there. He's, they're talking about the fuel status, and actually in the original novel of Battlestar Galactica, one of the reasons why the Colonials were suing for peace in that novel was because of the lack of resources for battles for the thallium, the ability to fuel the fleet. Wow, I tied that in somehow. I don't know how to. But anyways,
brilliantly done. Brilliantly done.
Somehow the fans and the thallium fuel the fleet, so we are the thallium for the fleet. But anyways,
there you go.
Yeah, I think that was part of the original novel, I believe, and it was. But it goes with every war. Every war has a battle of resources, a battle of attrition. Right. I can't continue to fight if I don't have the resources that I need.
Fuel in particular, however, is rarely used in science fiction. I mean, unless you look at more hard fiction, right? Things like The Expanse and everything that's around, what could really happen, what could happen in our solar system. But as soon as you get into the realm of, far out military sci-fi or space opera, fuel is never really looked at. Mm-hmm. Maybe there are some Star Trek episodes where they look for replenishing the lithium crystals and stuff like that. Yep. So it does happen, but it's not a main theme. But in reality, most wars, if not almost all of them, are fought over resources ultimately. So it's one of these things that grounds it, that makes sense, where you don't have to think about, there is some, I don't know, some cultural behavior that we don't know because the writers came up with that. And there might be great ideas, but something needs to get you into the story and gets you to understand, well, what's this about in 30 seconds.
Mm-hmm. Well, I will say I was watching a video earlier this week or something, and I stumbled upon this guy, and his complaint with science fiction was, he said, so these two battle groups in space decide that, we're going to fight on this particular plane, but you have 3D, right. and that's been bothering me all week, and you just kind of solved that piece of the puzzle for me. Yeah, it makes sense. You're going on the plane of the planet. And I'm just like, that makes complete sense. So...
yeah, I'm glad I could help out there. It was something. Some of the science fiction space battles, meeting head on always seems to be problematic. So I would see it always more as a side by side. So really going back to traditional maneuvers in naval warfare, where you have battle lines that don't meet head on, but they sail side by side. And that is much more realistic in space than anything else. And if that happens in a planetary plane, what you could also think about using what has always been used in warfare on the sea, you use the elements, right? Ship captains would look at, of course, back in the days, the winds, they would look at currents. And now you don't necessarily have that in space, but you have the gravity wells of large planets. that can help you with stuff that we're already using, like swing by maneuvers to maintain speed, or to change the course of large spaceships, and that would all make sense to be in the planetary plane. So I think this can be presented as a good argument that is still realistic. Head-on battles a bit problematic, but the how they depict it. Yeah. I think Star Wars is probably the prime example there. It just still looks great. So right. if you have other elements that make your stuff work, right, then go for it.
But I mean, you're back to the age of pirates, though. I mean, you're still doing broadsides. You're still putting your guns, the side of the ship that has the most guns against the side of the ship, or the area of the ship that doesn't have as much protection. So I think you're still, it's still the age of piracy. I mean, you still have that roll and the pitch and I think even, but now you have the roll, the pitch, and even the underbelly of something. And then of course now, but you're talking about futuristic ships that may have weapons 360 degrees all the way around. They're not going to just have it on one side. They're going to have it on the bottom, the top, or whatever else. So right. I think, that's fantastic. That I love this. I love this segment. I can't wait to do more of these.
I look forward to seeing the future of these segments.
But still, Commander Kane's
thanks,
dead.
Guys.
Anyways,
I appreciate that.
Commander Kane's dead. That's it. I'm going to leave it at that. So we have reached the top of the hour, and thank you so much for coming on. And this was fantastic. Like I said, I really appreciate this. This was a fun segment. We need to. I can't wait to get to the next one. And we'll see you again. But we want to thank all of the people out there that have joined us. The people who have lived in the world of Steven, in the world of Bert, in the world of us. The fans. It's important that we recognize everybody that it's out there, because we do fuel those fandoms. We do fuel those ideas. We do fuel those fantasies. And with that, unfortunately, we have to call it an end, but we will be back again next Thursday. Whether you like it or not. Just kidding. And Mediocre.
The real people will be back then, though, right?
Real people will be back then, but Mediocre. I really love having you on the show. We always have a good time.
Love being here.
It's been a fantastic night. Thanks, Steven. You're out there still, and we'll be here right after the show as well, and Bert and everybody else that's been chiming in on the what did you call them earlier? The texts or the chats?
Yeah.
In the chats or the texts, we really appreciate you being here. But we always say at the end of every show, it's all about the people that make the fandom. So it is about you, because the fans do fuel the fleet. So here's to the fans. And thank you much. We will see you next week, next Thursday. We'll be here, and hopefully you will be too. Take care.
Cheers, guys.
Fans fuel the fleet.